on the video. So I hope you're hearing this, and thank you. We all want to express our thanks to you.
Thank you, Paul. I really appreciate the kind words. It's been a great 5 years. I really feel like we've made a tremendous amount of progress with the Sewage and Water Board. But by being able to be there when they needed certain funding mechanisms, and it's turned out to be a great relationship, watching Gassan and his team mature and grow and get better. And I'm really looking forward to the two Davids being part of this group going forward. That's going to be a hell of an upgrade to where we were, and I look forward to continuing to help in any way that I can.
Okay, well, thank you, Bill. And with that, let me introduce our two new members. First, two lefts down, okay, is David Gallo. David is taking Casey's place and is the new vice chair of the board. And to my immediate left is David Kirstein, who is going to have a hard time filling Bill having shoes. I will not feel Bill But David has been very involved in community activities and in the infrastructure area in particular, as well as criminal justice, and he's going to, we had to twist his arm a little bit, but we're very happy that he's agreed to join. Thank you. So with that, let me move on to the agenda. And the first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. These minutes were sent out to the board several days ago. There have been no changes to those minutes. So are there any comments or changes, issues about? If none, I'd entertain moved and seconded to approve the minutes. Okay, Chuck, I'm sorry about that. All in favor? Aye. No opposed. Second on the agenda is the approval of the quarterly report. And I want to point out that we did send this quarterly report out earlier, but we have several days ago, but we have made a change to it, which we issued shortly before the meeting. And the change is in section I, you see. It's on the second to last page, page 6. It's under letter I, deferral of funding for bulk chemical feed and storage facility and new river intake fender system to prioritize West Power Complex funding. So what we did at the last meeting, and this is we agreed with the Sewage and Water Board to defund those defer those two projects. In gray, a little bit concerned there, I guess. Defer these two projects to free up $10 million that would allow the Sewage and Water Board to put it with $11 million that the city was able to give it then. That allowed them to award the contract and start negotiating with the contractor to hopefully reduce the delta we had here. We did agree and told the city council that we would hold that, Sewage and Water Board would hold that $10 million as a contingency. If the additional $10 million the city promised, which should come this fourth quarter or third quarter, I'm not sure which.
Later in August,
August. So when that 10 million comes, the whole 21 shortfall is coming from the city. But this 10 million would not be freed up to go back to these projects, but be held as a contingency until we realize that we don't need it.
Just one clarification on the numbers. The CEA has been now executed and signed with the city, a total of 21 million, and we received 8 million. We just sent an invoice to be funding that. So there's 13 remaining is what they need to do, some additional bond sales to fund that. So it's essentially, halfway.
But have you been able to award the contract and negotiate? Okay.
Yeah, so the.
Which that was the important part, is to get that process started.
That's right.
Right, okay. Just pointing out that change, that's why the last minute change. If there are any other changes or comments about it, if not, could I have a motion to approve the quarterly report?
I move to approve the quarterly report.
Aaron moves and David Gallo seconds. If no discussion, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so we've approved the quarterly report. Okay, with that, let's move on to the presentations. And first on the agenda is the Fair Share Agreement financial update by the City of New Orleans.
Thank you, Eric Smith for the City of New Orleans. So we'll start off just talking about the revenue we've been getting. You know, the next slide. Okay. So thankfully we've got the bugs that we were dealing with last quarter in terms of revenue being appropriately journaled and reporting shaken out. So everything is up to date at this point. We don't foresee that being an issue again. If we're just looking at collections down at the bottom here, that second table, you kind of see estimated and also up to date, comparing this year calendar January through May 1st to the previous 2 years. Really, the 2024 as of 5/1, the one thing that you'll notice is it's about $5 million above where we were 2023. That's due to that $5 million annual payment. Otherwise, revenue collections have been pretty much identical to what we were getting in 2023. So our annual estimates that we had provided at the previous meeting, pretty much meeting it. So we are expecting, in terms of the Sewage and Water Board collections for 2024, to pull in about $22 million for the year. But everything has been pretty much on track there.
And that 22 million does not include the 5 million.
It does. It does include that 5 million.
It does include the 5 million.
Because you'll see where we're at right now. So as of May 1st, you're 11 million for the year. That includes that 5 million. So we're expecting.
We also got 5 million in 23.
Yes, we did. It's just that 5 million wasn't reported as of 5/1 in 23. If you recall, that was kind of a mid-year thing. So. Okay, so if there's no questions about the revenue, we can go on. I can kind of go into some details of the project. As always, our DDD drainage improvement project, you know, we are expecting construction to begin, you know, before the end of the year here. We have, you know, the original plans were completed right around the last meeting we had. Those are in revision and engineering right now. We expect that to be completed by August, and then construction's notice to proceed for construction to come after that. We do anticipate and have put into the planning a construction stop right around the end of the year before Super Bowl. So we've kind of planned in how we're going to deal with that construction stop, make sure that we have a minimum amount of disruptions to traffic and parking downtown for Super Bowl and Mardi Gras. So we move on. I can kind of go over the rest of that.
If I can
Yes,
interrupt you, just for the benefit of David and David. So when we passed the fair share, the idea was that the downtown development district would contribute $2.5 million a year annually to the infrastructure fund. They did not want to do that, but rather they agreed to fund at a rate of $2.5 million a year specific projects in their district. These are those projects. And so my question on that, is this amounting to about $2.5 million a year?
Well, so actually the next slide goes over the budget and where we're at. So just in terms of as of pretty much last week, our estimate for the total project is about $9.1 million that we've revised. Up to now, we've really only spent about $500,000. So we have received some of that DDD funding. If you recall from back when we were doing these meetings during COVID, you know, there was some delay in terms of getting, we had the CEA that we had negotiated with DDD. and then COVID kind of killed their funding source, so it took a little bit of time for us to get that escrow money back in, but we are getting that. And given just the length of time that this project has taken, I think we really started in earnest in this in 2020, if I recall correctly. And we expect this to be finished the first half of 2025, so it's amounting to about that.
Question for you.
Yeah.
I know that the intent was to try to have a lot of it done before the Super Bowl.
Yes.
And we missed that window. And so we expected it to start in the end of 2024, like December,
Basically the fourth quarter. So we expect, so we have the engineering revisions and everything else that are ongoing right now. We expect that to be completed and ready to proceed to construction August. So basically from there, we do expect the fourth quarter construction to start. But as you said, we know that we're not going to have this completed by Super Bowl. So part of we've kind of built in basically a month there where we're shutting that construction down, doing temporary asphalt where necessary so that we have everything, minimal disruptions for Super Bowl and Mardi Gras. And then after that, we will start back up. But I believe we expect to have this completed the first half of 2025. But yeah, the actual planning and engineering took far longer than we had expected. I think you've been at these meetings long enough to recall what some of the reasons were, but a lot of that was due to just delays due to COVID. We had expected initially to start construction on this back in 2022. So
another question for you. There's work being done in downtown. Are any of those other projects affiliated with this work what we're doing?
Not that I'm aware of. As far as I know, we have been working pretty well to coordinate with Sewage and Water Board and other utilities and everyone else who are doing construction or just doing maintenance downtown, to where we're doing less of the repeat of work. So that, as far as I know, we're still coordinating that as well as we can. But no, there's nothing that any other agencies are doing that's directly related to this yet.
Thank you.
And the rest of the slide basically just reiterates some of the same issues that we've brought up before, which one of the other holdups on this project has just been utility issues. So much like if you recall with Bourbon Street Phase 2, we ran into a lot of delays there because as we were actually starting construction and pulling up the street, we realized a lot of our utility maps and whatnot were off. So we had to go back and do some re-engineering there. Same thing here, we have some water lines and also some Entergy utility conduits and whatnot that are in spots in the road that do not lend themselves well to installing the water catch systems and then the permeable paving that we expected. So we've had to kind of re-engineer around that.
Do we have an idea of how much the demobilization because of the Super Bowl and the restart is actually going to cost? How much is that really getting into the?
I know, but that's an excellent question. I will try and get an answer to that. It's one of those things that I imagine, especially since we're expecting construction to start in the fourth quarter, that we're attempting to minimize the amount of costs there, because otherwise I would imagine that we would just go ahead and pause construction until after Mardi Gras altogether. So
Yeah, I have a quick question.
but yeah.
That I was going to actually, I think it's a very good question.
Yeah.
Who is the awarding agency of this work?
There's DPW.
Okay, so it's going to be
yeah.
DPW. The only thing I would say too, and I know they've had trouble in the past, is to somehow, whether it bids in the fall or whatever it bids, is to try to what I call is solicit contractors to make sure there's participation of the city struggle to get participation in their bid process.
Yeah, I'm not aware of where we are in terms of the construction bidding. I know that for some of the similar sized projects like this, we're finishing engineering. So a lot of times we pre-bid the construction. So let me get an answer, follow up on that and see where we're at in that bidding. Because especially given the size of the project, I imagine that we may already be there, but I don't have an authoritative answer there.
Do you have a prioritization of the projects that will actually begin in whatever?
Which blocks we're going to begin, I don't. I can again request that, but overall, the permeable paving and water management project for this is about 18 blocks of the DDD. It's a little, again, just due to cost increases and everything else from our original 2020 plan, it's a little smaller than we had originally anticipated due to the budget. But yeah, let me get some more authoritative answers there on what the priority blocks are and then what the demobilization costs are going to be. Those are excellent questions. And so, last meeting, we spoke a little bit about the Lower Ninth Ward Green Infrastructure Sankofa. This is a project that has absolutely no funding from the city or the IMF. It's completely unrelated, but it is a major drainage and water retention project. So we've gotten some questions about it. I basically got every piece of information we could and just wanted to be able to give you guys a very detailed explanation of what that project is, the city's involvement. And then, again, since it's not a direct IMF project, I'm more than happy to give any updates or answer any questions about it moving forward. But I would imagine that hopefully this will cover that project. So this is, if you're not familiar with this at all, so basically Sankofa, or this Lower Ninth Ward water retention project, if you go right over the industrial canal, there's basically, on the other side of the industrial canal, there's the Florida Canal. So all along there, it's a large strip of land, about 40 acres, right along the canal there, that we are involved in a public-private partnership here with the Sankofa Community Development Corporation. The city owns the majority of the land, so that's where the partnership comes in. We have essentially worked to give permitting and permission to the Sankofa Community Development Corporation to do to raise the funds and do the actual work here. The idea is to basically restore all of this to wetlands that will then be able to retain stormwater, so we'll have less flooding in that area of the Lower Garden District, similar to kind of what we've done with the Gentilly resilience projects. It's similar to that. So this is a map of kind of what we expect it to be when it's finished. We go to the next slide. I can give a little bit more detail. So again, this is not a direct city project even. We do work very closely with the Sankofa Community Development Corporation. Both the city and Sewage and Water Board have been intimately involved with them on construction design and permitting. We obviously retain ownership of the land there that's ours. But again, the idea is to restore this so that we can reduce overall subsidence in that area. I don't know if you've been to the Lower Ninth Ward in the last 15 years, but especially that area. We do have a lot of sinking due to the constant desiccation of the ground due to flooding and drying out. And then just in general, improving the overall floodplain and quality of the area. One of the things that we have seen actually just in a little bit that has been done just in terms of ecological innovation or ecological restoration is when we're doing bird counts and examining plant growth and things like that, we've really seen a flowering, so to speak. Again, funding-wise, so at this point, all of the funding for this has been strictly from state capital outlay and bond funds. We haven't spent any city dollars or obviously any IMF dollars on this to this point. We go to the next slide. Let's see here, I think. So initially back in 2017, if you've been over here, there's a small piece that actually was in the photo in the previous slide that is what was completed as a pilot. So if you've been in the area, it's a little parklet, it's about 2 acres, has a pond, a gazebo. They've gone back and dug out the wetlands to make it to where it retains water again. And the idea here is to eventually expand that out to all 40 acres. We've had some expansion, so starting last year, they started construction back up. This is a project that has pretty much gone in fits and starts as funding has come up, because again, it's not a city-funded project directly. So they've completed 6 acres to now. I got a question at the last meeting specifically about the contracting, DBE participation and whatnot. Because this is basically a public-private partnership in the Sankofa Community Development Corporation is responsible for doing all that subcontracting and the construction. I don't have DED participation information at this point, especially because of the limited amount of work that's actually been done. What we do expect is this next round of work, as it's being approved and the contracts are then being bid out, that I'll be able to get back to you all with some more specifics in terms of what they're spending specifically in the DD participation, local participation and contracting, et cetera. And then let's see here. Again, same as the first slide for the most part, just giving you a little more detail on what we're building there. And then
Where is that located? Can you give me just?
So again, if you're going down Claiborne and you go over the industrial canal, you got the Florida Canal to your left there towards the lake. So basically where the industrial canal and the Florida Canal meet is the beginning of this project. And then it goes down probably about a mile or so, just along the banks of the Florida Canal there.
Okay, thank you.
And then last but not least, so actually after we finish the presentation here, obviously as you know, the legislative session wrapped up last week. So there's actually an update here. So at the legislative session last week, they did authorize some additional state bond funding. So we've got $1 million in P1 that was authorized for 2024, and then $1.9 million in P5, which is a significant increase from what we'd actually had appropriated last year. So we'll actually be able to, the Sankofa Community Development Corporation will be able to move forward with some additional construction this year as a result.
But it appears that you got 250,000 on that slide. Am I misreading it?
So that was for this session. I hadn't gotten that information back because the session hadn't closed. So I have a verbal update for you on that because I literally got this information yesterday. Because we were waiting for the session to close, and then on top of that, we were waiting to see what the governor was going to do in terms of line item veto and whatnot. So what we're ending up with is $1 million in P1 and then $1.9 million in P5. And then that again, we kind of go back over what the scope is. It's really a nice area. I don't live too far away, and it's kind of amazing that just right on the other side of the industrial canal there, you feel like you're out in like Bayou Sauvage or something. It's really a beautiful area, well tree covered, and the little wetland ponds and stuff that they've created is amazing. It does not feel like you're anywhere near the city. If there are any, if you guys have any follow-up questions on this, again, I'll provide updates just in terms of where we are in construction. They have been doing kind of annual studies of the impact so far. But again, we've completed 6 acres to this point, and as of before last year, only 2. So I can't say that the data from those studies is exactly voluminous yet. But as we're able to collect that and just see like how much additional stormwater we're retaining versus what was there for this project, I really, just from preliminarily, it should be similar to what we saw with some of the Gentilly resilience projects in terms of being able to do some major retention and eliminate some of that street level flooding that we see in that neighborhood on a regular basis. And so that's Sankofa. If you have any specific questions moving forward, please let me know. And then just finally, this is the next slide just kind of gives you up as of May, kind of where we are in terms of funding and spending. Pretty much everything that has been raised over the course of the last 6 years, again, it's been from state sources and has been spent on these are the particular line items if you're interested. And then finally, just an update on where we are with the DPW portion of the IMF. As you are aware from the previous meetings, a large part of the city's portion of fair share, that 25%, we intend to earmark to in-house hiring for new maintenance crews, specifically to do catch basin cleanouts, to do repaving as we're doing cuts, things like that. as with everything else in the city and civil service, we are still struggling to fill all of these positions. We've hired 17 out of 38 at this point. We are advertising for the remainder and hope, the hope is that we will have this filled full this year, but just to be honest with you, every city department we have struggled to hire and keep new employees since COVID.
So, the new continuous improvement asset management division, that would be staffed by how many people?
So it's 38, I have 38 of the positions have been requisitioned for this year.
In that new?
Yeah.
Department?
And so I can't tell you exactly how many the long-term goal is. I can just tell you, we requisitioned 38 in this year's budget for this.
So what does that division do?
So the primary purpose was to have more people in-house to do things like filling potholes, to do clean-outs, emergency clean-outs of storm drains, things like that. Because the next piece that I'm going to go over is actually where we're at with the ARPA-funded storm drain clean-out. But as I think Rick spoke to at the last meeting, just in terms of how the city has, over the last 30 years or so, eliminated a lot of the in-house maintenance positions that we used to have for that upkeep of our stormwater infrastructure. The idea here is obviously not to get us back to where we were, because that would be almost impossible, but at least have some in-house group that we can rely on to take care of things on a day-to-day basis. And so the last piece here is really talking about that clean-out project, which we covered briefly at the last meeting. We started that in earnest back in February. We have 10 crews out working citywide. If I recall, the goal there was to kind of at least touch all the lines that were under 36 inches. They've been working amazingly fast. So as of the beginning of this month, we're about halfway through the anticipated cleanouts for that project. We've hit 360,000 linear feet of drain lines for inspection and cleanout. The majority of that being main lines, and then about 44,000 feet of those lateral lines that go between. We've hit 3,200 catch basins, and almost 2 million pounds of debris has been pulled out and dumped, if anyone wants that. We can move the next slide and tell you where we're going. So the expectation, the goal for this project was to hit about 750,000 linear feet, so 750,000 linear feet that we anticipate to be completed by August. So by the end of summer, we really should be there. And then I have outlined kind of our expectations. So by the end of this month, we should be right past 500,000, which will give us those last 250,000 feet to hit over the next 2 months. And again, we're about halfway there in terms of the anticipated catch basin cleanouts. Obviously, the city has a lot more than 5,500 catch basins. What we've done is basically utilize 301 reporting, our own internal reporting in terms of flood areas when we have those major rain events, and really focused on those immediate areas for our cleanouts to make sure that we're hitting the places that we're most likely having obstructions that are then causing street flooding.
This is a contractor working for DPW.
Yes.
That's already been awarded in the middle of the project. It's
Yes.
one contract.
Yes. I believe it's $10.5 million altogether, with $10 million of it specifically to the actual cleanout project.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
In regard to the catch basins, are you using the vacuum trucks to accomplish that?
So as was said, it's a subcontractor. I don't know if we're using the city. The city did purchase a number of the vacuum trucks to do regular maintenance. I don't know that we're using those. I believe it's the subcontractors. But I don't have an authoritative answer. I'll be glad to get that for you though.
I've got a question. So you're talking about 5,600 catch basins out of, what is it, 77,000, something like that?
Yes, about 10%.
And you're also saying that you're trying to address the areas where you've had the most complaints. At the end of this, would we have any idea of what it would take to do all of it? In other words, if you're doing 5,600, you just do a straight line ratio, then you'd say whatever you spent on that 5,600, you're going to spend over 10 times that to do the whole system. Do we have any idea what it would take to do the whole system?
So I think we spoke about this briefly at the last IAB meeting, which was essentially your estimate of it being a linear progression there is more or less what we had estimated. So essentially about $100 million. We're going to hit just about 10% of the system with this.
So do you think that if this is the worst, is there any that could be estimated as being better and less costly?
I don't know, because part of the things with these cleanouts and really all of the work that we're doing there is because a lot of this is deferred maintenance. We don't know what we don't know with we don't really know what's in a lot of these lines and the catch basins until we hit them. I think that is to be said of pretty much every piece of stormwater maintenance infrastructure in the entire city at this point. Now, obviously, as we're going and doing these things, it gives us an opportunity to do a better job of starting to log and kind of see where we are and where our assets are. It's the same thing as as we've been talking about with the construction delays with the DDD project or even Bourbon Street Phase 2. There's a lot of, again, things that we don't know what we don't know when we get into these. Focusing on the areas that we had the most reports of, there's a hope that there's going to be an obvious immediate gain there. But for all we know, all of the catch basins have similar clean out issues, just we don't have as much stormwater that's hitting them and causing sort of flooding. But I think that the kind of generalized estimate of 10% costs us 10 million, 100% is probably going to cost us about 100 million is the best back of the envelope we can do.
So you're prioritizing the ones you clean based on the squeaky wheel against the oil?
Yes, so between 311 complaints and then just our own observations of what specific blocks or intersections or areas that we're seeing consistent topping street flooding during rain events is where we focus.
Any other questions? Is that the completion of it?
That, I believe, just the last thing, that is it. The last slide is pretty much just a reiteration of where we've allocated the 2024 budgeting for the DPW pieces of fair share. But we've covered this in previous meetings. So if there are any specific questions for that, I'll be glad to either answer them or try to get responses. But that is the end of our presentation. If there are any further questions, please let me know.
Any questions? Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Next on the agenda is the presentation by the Social Water Board. Is that?
That's us.
Okay, thank you.
Be myself, Becca, Gray, and Kate, so
Okay.
get the entire team. Thank
Okay,
you all.
okay, when we get to you, then we'll know we get the real information.
That's right, you'll get proper data at that point.
That's true, always.
Absolutely, all right. So the first slide, first and foremost, we've really had a focus on paving, and this body has had a direct and very measurable impact in service cuts within the city of New Orleans. This year, we had asked for $4 million to supplement our paving efforts, and I'm pleased to report that as of this morning, we are down to actually 809 open cuts, which is still a lot, but when you consider that we were at 3,019 at this time last year, and our paving restoration timeline has gone from 101 days at this time last year, it's now down to just over 50 days with our internal crews as of this week.
So you're better than your 71 in this.
We do. We actually have better numbers than that as of today. Just reran the numbers from Monday to today, so it's decrease even continues as we take on those oldest cuts first. As you get a smaller sample size, the outliers will have a bigger effect. So if I've got one work order that's like 3 years old, it's gonna have a bigger effect when I'm down into a couple of hundred. And the goal again is get to a point where the number in the backlog will be less and less important, and the average time to completion will start being the metric. And we want to get to 2 to 4 weeks so that we're not out there having the hole get bigger, having the leak come back again, and all those other things. So making good progress there.
Steve, what's the difference between 2023 and 2024? I mean, great progress. What's the rationale?
When it's funding and resources. So when I started looking at this in January of '23, we had 1 crew doing paving. And we have 35 crews making holes. So the ratio is not very good. So at this point, we've got between 4 and 6 crews doing paving. We were mixing concrete by hand. We now have tow behind trailers. Our chief of networks, Ashraf, in his group in Zone 7, who handles our paving, has purchased electric breakers. We were breaking concrete with sledgehammers. We were hauling asphalt in tandem trucks as opposed to insulated trailers. So there's a lot of efficiency there. And then the IAB funding has been really instrumental in allowing our contractors to be able to eat that backlog. So our internal crews, we don't want to eat the backlog with internal crews because I want them to keep us steady, because once we get the backlog down to that 2 to 4 weeks, I don't want to have too many people with not enough to do. So we're using the contractors to eat the backlog, and the IAB funding has been critical to do that.
So we allocated, I think, in 2 phases, a total of $8 million. Where are you on that spend? Do you think that amount, whatever you have left of that $8 million will finish the backlog?
Yes, I anticipate that the budget that we have this year will get us down to that place where we're at a handful, a couple, 200, 300 open work orders, but most importantly, an average time of 2 to 4 weeks.
Hey, Paul,
Yeah.
just a quick question. Are those other crews cross-trained at all, your internal crews, to do, so they can do making holes and filling holes? Are they compartmentalized?
So the way it's set up for us, we have one group that does paving, that does the paving. So we have 8 zones. Of those 8 zones, only 1 does paving because it's a fairly specialized scope of work. Now, with that said, they all meet together on a weekly basis and they collaborate to make sure that each crew understands we need to make our holes as small as possible. We're sharing means and methods so that we're not doing crosswork. So they do collaborate, but we do have one crew that does the paving.
Okay, thanks.
With that, I'll turn it over to Becca with Smart Metering.
Good afternoon, everyone. We do have some updates on our Smart Metering program. We have a little bit of updated numbers here. We actually have 24,000 meters that have been installed throughout the city. We are installing them all across the city, demographically blind, so we're making sure that they're equitably distributed throughout the entire city and across all the different districts. We do anticipate that our customer portal is going to be available later this fall. This is that modern account management tool that allows not only the utility to see that data, but the customers as well. And one of the great things from a communication standpoint is we also have the ability to mirror exactly what the customer sees. So our customer service reps can look at the exact same screen as our customers, and it really enables that communication to be very effective. We do remain on track to install approximately half of our meters by the end of 2024. The big caveat to that is weather. As we all know, we're in hurricane season. There's a lot of things that can happen from a construction standpoint side between now and then. So right now, projects are moving on pace. We're making sure that if we identify any of the service lines as part of the installation process, that we are notifying our team, notifying the residents as well, so that they're aware of what's going on. And we're leaving them information on next steps with that as well. And we're continuing all of our training internally for all of our personnel. You can imagine this is an extreme departure from a lot of times people are using paper to do their job, and now we're giving them all of this data to use. So the training and that organizational transformation for our workforce is extremely important.
Do you find the pace at which you're being able to complete them getting better now? Because you're at 24,000 meters replaced of a total of how many approximately?
140,000 total meters in our population. So we're anticipating to be around 70,000 by the end of this year. We intentionally start very slow. So our install crews, we only started with 4 total installers. Now our crew, we're up to about 24 installers on any given day. And that was intentional, because we want to make sure that in this process, your data gets every step of the way correctly. That's a critical path. And so that slow start allows us to make sure that we're really, really tight on our processes, procedures, all of our QAQC, so that when we started really rolling, and this thing started moving, which it is now, we had all the foundations.
So the pace now is a lot quicker than it was when you initially started. So.
Yeah, so I think the first week we had 30 installations. Now we range between, in a week, now we're in between 1,800 and 2,000 a week. So when
How much a week, I'm sorry?
between 1,800 and 2,000. When we have a really heavy rain week, they feed, 700. It just depends, right? It's all on that pressure.
And are these actual sewage and water board employees, or are they contractors, or a mix?
Yeah, it's a mix. About 85% of the installations occur with our contractors, but our internal leadership also does installations as part of their normal work as well. Sure. You can go to the next slide. We are continuing our communications. One of the most important questions that everyone wants to know is when is time you're getting here. So we want to make sure that you're providing that information. We have a dashboard that is live online on our landing page, and all of the dots in blue, you can see that the meter has already been upgraded, and everything in yellow or gold, for those that have better vision than I, those are going to be installed within the next 2 to 3 months. You really keep your construction schedule on where you're going to be more tight because of the variability in the pacing due to the weather. So about every 2 to 3 months, we complete the schedule again of anticipated installations.
Perfect weather, how long does it take to install one of these for a residential?
Yeah, so we have the 4 meter boxes. So that's what has that Crescent logo on top. That's the size of that 12-inch meter box. So for those, which is about 134,000 of our population, it takes between 15 and 30 minutes. It's literally, you pop it out, you put it in, you put the new lid in, you program it. It's really, really quick. For some of our larger installations, we have just under 5,000 that are intermediate size. So that's between 1.5 and 2-inch meters. Those can take anywhere between 1 and 2 hours because you have to change the plumbing within the manhole. And then our largest customers, 4-inch and up, those anywhere between 1 and 4 hours. It just depends on the complexity of that plumbing. Next slide. One of the things that we rolled out because billing has officially begun about 6 weeks ago is this is our new billing for this transition. So if you get a meter installed in between your billing window, that first bill will have partially mechanical information and partially smart meter information. So this is what we call our transition bill. So in order to help our customers through this transition to the new accurate technology, we are capping that first bill at 20% above the 12-month average. This right now has affected approximately 30% of our customers have been over that 20% average, and that's what we anticipated when we rolled out this program. So this is operating as we anticipated, and I'll have some more information on billing and billing rates in the coming slides.
Could you go back to that? Thank you. So you've got a new bill and new bill format and a new system. Can you discuss, because I understand, I don't know what the right term, your strike team that you put together to help with customer service on this very thing about you've now been transferred over, these are the things you can do with that. Can you describe how you put that together?
Sure, but I want to clarify a little bit what you said. The billing system is the same and the process is the same to create a bill. So the only change that the smart metering program has done is how we're getting that reads into the system. So from a process
The bill also
perspective.
has an explanation of the system on it, is what I was really trying.
Sure, if you go forward 2 slides. Yeah, so this is what that insert that you're talking about. So your bill itself still looks in the same format. Unfortunately, we can't change the design in a short time frame, so you're still stuck with that bill as it's shown, but we are putting an insert in that transition bill. So
It's an insert, okay.
yeah, it's an insert for our Eagle customers. They're getting emailed this information. So There's also information on how to read the bill up on the website with this new bill as well. But it kind of explains what happens with that bill. If they did get an adjustment on that bill, that 30% of customers, it also says it on this letter, so customers know it's anticipated. One of the important things about that transition, that cap function, is it's only on that first bill. After that, the bill will reflect the actual usage that's going through the meter, and there will be no adjustments.
You mentioned earlier that it was a random, so you just randomly do any address and you just go pop all over the city. Is that how you roll?
Not quite. So how we set it up is we do it based on meter reading route. So a route, generally speaking, is about 2 blocks worth of meters. Because we want to be efficient. We want to complete a full meter reading route so that the meter reading is not going to read 1 or 2. So how we did it to make sure it was demographically aligned is we matched the number of meters within a route with our pacing schedule. And we also made sure that on the front end, they weren't messing with our current meter reading schedule, and on the back end, they weren't messing with billing. So we match those numbers with the appropriate window, and that's how we schedule out the installations. If you notice in the map why there was some of those blue dots that are kind of everywhere, those are 1.5 and 2 inch meters. So those are not confined to a route. So those installations we know have more travel time, and it's a specific crew that does each one of those. So that's why they were a little bit more spread across the map.
And basically, I guess, by looking on the website, you can see if your neighborhood or your council district or whatever has been done.
Yeah, so you can see that. We're also notifying all the neighborhood associations, so they know that anticipated schedule if we're going to be in there. We've participated in, 70 or 80 now neighborhood association meetings. We're involved in a lot of those. We want to make sure the community knows when we're going to be in their area.
I'd like to get you on the calendar for the Hoffman Triangle meeting next month, where I serve as president, so we can talk to our community about what that looks like.
All right.
So probably talk a little bit about the equity component by district, since efficiency and equity.
Hey, can y'all speak up, because I've got folks on.
Oh, sure.
Thanks.
Sorry, no one's ever accused me of being quiet before. Okay, great. Yeah, so not only do we do it demographically blind, but on the back end, we make sure that we had a third party look for equity to ensure that we were actually hitting all of our types of residents fairly across the city. And we also look across things like council districts to make sure that all of the council districts were represented. We have one council district that is lower in their percentage completion because we're waiting on a final monopole to be raised for that network coverage. So that district is a little bit lower, but the rest are pretty equally distributed. Okay, so we'll go back one. So the reason for that transition bill is because this technology is extremely accurate. And this is a really important point that we're trying to be as transparent as we can, right? Everyone wants to know what the impact is for their bill, rightly so. So we're trying to make sure that this message is very clear and presented very often. Our current population meters is past their usable lifespan. These ages are well beyond what would be considered an accurate meter per any standard. So over time, these mechanical meters slow down. Their moving parts inside, they slow down. You're under registering, sometimes not even registering usage at all. So the usage that these meters were capturing weren't necessarily indicative of the actual usage. So we did a study based on the meters that we had in the ground in that slow start application to see what the potential impact would be on the customer's bill. So we do anticipate the bills to increase for customers, where those small meters approximately 10% increase. Those intermediate meter customers between 1.5 and 2 inch meters around 17%. For our large customers around 25%. We're stating this often and loudly. The real caveat to this though is that everyone uses water differently. What this technology does is measure it accurately. And so we can anticipate what a potential average impact would be, but it really is customer by customer dependent. We do have videos online explaining this. It's part of the handout in that first bill insert, so we're making sure that that message is out there as often as we can so that we're not surprising anyone with the impact.
You guys have an external communications company that's helping you in this? Because this is critical, because when people see the bills go up, they're gonna have questions. So I know you're saying it loud all over, but is anyone helping you get the message out?
Yeah, so we do have our project management partners at Jacobs who help us with the communication efforts. We do have Bright Moments who helps us do a lot of the communication efforts in the community. We also have our normal communication team who does a great job getting that message out there. So it's something that you're going to continue to hear because it is such an important message. We don't want to take anyone by surprise.
So today's meetings,
Oh, yes, and this afternoon we have, for our commercial customers, we have a webinar. As a lot of those commercial customers either have a lot of meters in their population or the larger meters, they're going to feel any change in bill impact much more significantly than maybe just a single family home. So we really are making sure that we are trying to over-communicate as much as possible so that people aren't surprised by the impacts. We're also standing up a key accounts group under Renee, and so this will be the one-stop shop for those large users so they can get any questions answered, and they would have the expertise on all of those key account initiatives. Okay, next slide. So on the previous slide, we actually now have sent out over 20,000 smart meter bills, and these represent all 20 cycles. So we have gone through one full month.
So that 17 is actually 20?
Yeah, they just updated all these numbers right before the meeting. I talked to Grace, but she said she wasn't gonna send it because it would be, that they would give us. I know, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Any customer feedback from the ones you've already billed?
Yes, so the questions we've received thus far in regards to the billing, actually, I'm going to talk a little bit on the next slide here, okay? Okay. I did want to touch, though, on a really important part of the slide, and this is what you were referencing, is our strike team. So what we did is we pulled a very specific and talented population of individuals, both internally and externally, and this is what we call our billing strike team. Because we knew that with this new data and new processes, and of course all the external eyes on the success and accuracy of this program, that we wanted to make sure we were checking every single step of the way. So this strike team is handling all of the billing for all of our smart meter customers from the beginning to the end. They're extremely successful and talented group, and they have a tiny office that they all work together. So they're trained cross-functionally, and as we continue to install meters, we're going to have a larger group that is working on this specific billing. Okay, we go to the next slide. So one of the great things about all of this data that comes is that we can use it to offset some of those potential billing impacts. And one of the ways that we can do that is through these leak detection letters. So in the first 2 months of the program, we sent out over 3,000 leak detection letters. So that is when water went through your meter for 4 gallons per hour for 48 hours. So that's about a $40 impact on your bill. We would send a letter to notify a customer, hey, this is going on. We've actually gotten a lot of very successful feedback. 47% of our accounts have fixed that leak within a week after receiving the letter. That saved our customers an average of $68,000 on their bill. This alert functionality will be replaced later this year on the customer portal, but in the interim, we want to make sure we're communicating that with our customers. So most of the feedback that we've received on this has to do with this letter being sent out. People want to know, is my leak gone? Did it work? What is the time frame for any kind of adjustment? An example, someone found a break under their driveway, but the plumber can't be there for 3 weeks. What does that do for them? So we're working through all that with the customers on what that looks like.
So how do you determine, you have a question, and I'll let you finish, but how do you determine a leak? You look at it at nighttime and say if it's still flowing as opposed to guessing what they should be doing with it?
Yeah, so right now we left it at 4 gallons per hour for 48 hours consecutively for every single customer type. Some customers, for example, folders, they use water 24 hours a day and always will. Or anyone with a cooling tower or a certain type of boiler applications. So they have the ability to turn off that alarm if it doesn't work for that customer. We talked about increasing it like for multifamilies, like big multifamilies, you're gonna have toilet flushes 24 hours a day, so they might use that water, so it's more common to have that. But when we actually increased any of those parameters, we would only take off about a handful of customers. So we left it straight across the board. But when that customer portal is up, any customer that has the portal can reset their parameters and their alerts so that they know what's going on. Maybe a text, email, or phone call.
So going forward, we no longer have estimated bills, but what would happen if the signal or you didn't get reported? Or is there any, since you've installed the new automated meters, has there been any that you're not getting the signal and you keep, what would happen if you had like a non-reporting meter? What would happen?
Sure, so right now we're still in a lot of the changes that we have procedurally internally. So to answer a lot of those alarm functions, so let's say there's a car parked over a meter.
Yep.
A lot of times it's a dumpster, to be quite frank. Let's say a dumpster's parked over a meter, okay, and we're not getting a signal through that dumpster.
Yep.
So we get an alarm after it hasn't called back in 24 hours. And then after 3 days, it's a higher alarm. And so we have response times from a maintenance perspective on all of those alarms. If it's a dumpster, obviously the dumpster has to be moved, we can't access it. Let's say though it's something else that's obstructing it. They planted a foot of soil, and now it's not ready for that foot of soil in their new garden. So in those situations, we can drive by, and the signal strength would be stronger, potentially pick it up that way. We can walk by with a wand and get it, or we can actually go physically read the meter.
The intention is never to have an estimated bill again, and that's what I was, that would be in theory, in a perfect world. I wanted you to say that, that's what I was hoping to get to. So the estimation is.
Delta now, there's about a 10-day window where you can try and still get the read, but if not, then we would estimate it, put an estimate.
That's what I think that's just, again, I have a preference on my own, is that if we get away from estimates, it's where the problems start.
But I just look, there's two other things that I do want to say though. 95% of our meter population is heard by at least 3 towers. So like, let's say after a hurricane, one of the tower falls down off on the, 3 of them are heard, hear that meter. So we've got redundancy in that capacity, but I also want to temper the expectations that even perfect applications of this technology that have no other constraints on them do not hit 100%.
Yep.
That's just not a reality.
Yep.
And so just to temper that, the goal is, of course, always 100%, but.
Got it.
Yeah. That's it for smart metering, so.
Yep, Promise Pay, I just want to share with the IAB, this has been a very popular customer service, self-service type tool for customers with arrearages. They're able to access the software payment plans that we launched in February, and it's self-service. They don't have to call into Sewage Water Board. They can do it from a phone or internet, or there is a direct number to a call center that's supported by the vendor Promise Pay. So been very happy with the results since February when it launched, and we've gotten closer between 2 and 3 million by now collected, and we have roughly 9,000 customers with active plans and much better retention. The historical legacy payment plan that we used through CSM just not as flexible and not as easy for users to get in there and make payments. And in the new software, you choose to what we call flex the due date. You're kind of given a certain number of days to delay that without immediately getting penalized. So very happy with this so far, and look forward to inviting customers where we've talked about to get enrolled with a payment plan, and it's interest-free as the old plans were, and much easier to service your account. So just want to share that with the IAB. It's a big upgrade for us.
Actually, I will discuss lead service lines, thank you. So one of our other initiatives is the lead service line replacement program. We do have requirements for a publicly available service line inventory dashboard that will be available well in advance of October 16th this year, which is the deadline. Now, I will note that this does not mean that we will know what the service material is, simply that if it is known, we will show it to the public. If it is unknown, we will also communicate that. We'll be updating that as we find out what the material is. the compliance date, starting in 2027, that will start at this time a 10-year clock to replace 100% of the lead service lines within our system, which we estimate somewhere between 30 and 50% of those 140,000 lines at this point. One of the key challenges, and I believe there's legislation working on fixing that in this session, is that delineation between public and private property. Currently, we do not have the legal wherewithal to perform work on private property. That's considered a donation of public funds. So there is legislation helping us overcome that obstacle because, as you'll notice at the bottom, the State Bond Commission has approved $84 million in revolving fund dollars this year to support that lead service line program. But one of those requirements of that money is that the lead be replaced in its entirety, which naturally you don't want to leave. Even a foot of lead left is the same as not being able to replace it. In addition to that replacement from all the way to the house to the main, there will be a requirement for mitigation for disturbances, the availability of filter pitchers, lower action levels from 15 micrograms per liter to 10 micrograms per liter, and increased community outreach. And we will continue to have updates on this program as it develops.
One question,
Yes.
no, clarification. To be able to do this, it's actually a constitutional amendment, is that not correct? In other words, to be able to use this money on private.
Yes.
Yeah, so Renee, did that legislation pass so it would be on the ballot this November?
If there's going to be any constitutional convention, it was only, if there'd been a constitutional convention, could it have gotten on the November ballot? So that is a question.
In other words, in the normal course of events, if we didn't have a constitutional convention, it's too late to get it on the November ballot. It would have to go into next year.
Correct. And the reason is it wasn't, there was a pre-filing date, regardless of a constitutional, there was a pre-filing date that we missed that could have gotten it on the November ballot.
Okay, what would be if we can't take care of it in the constitutional convention, what would be the earliest date that could be voted on?
The next time the legislatures convene, we can get something on the back. It might be the
So
following.
they didn't even pass the legislation?
It passed contingent upon a constitutional amendment.
Okay,
It
so I'm
passed,
trying to figure out when the amendment vote could take place.
I'm not sure. I don't know if it could be the spring or the following fall.
I think it would have to be after the next legislative session.
Okay.
That'd be 2025. And if you don't mind piggybacking on that, the city has the same problem with some of our infrastructure and public works things. It's the same constitutional amendment that we also need to deal with, like sidewalks, for instance. Because those are considered private property. A lot of our sidewalk repair issues are hung up by the exact same public donation to private property. It would be a win-win if we ever get that permit.
So it doesn't mean we can't start work because we do have 583 individual situations where we know the private side has been replaced, but the public side remains lead. So we can at least start spending the funds.
When there's not lead on the private
That's right, while we continue to work on how to address this understood.
Thank you.
Yep.
Steve, also, it is still a chance that the homeowner, the property owner will allow you to do that, correct?
We would have to work through some of that. I don't have an exact answer on that. In some other jurisdictions in other states that I've worked in, you can address it through a temporary construction easement, but it's a little more complicated.
If I can interject again, the governor has yet to sign it into law, but it passed unanimously. And the first part allows municipalities to address the issue of access. The second part that the constitutional amendment is dependent upon has to do with the expenditure of federal funds on private property. Just to be clear, the first part is, as soon as the governor signs it or doesn't sign it, then we're not getting any indication that he's going to veto it. So the access part is all but is taken care of. It's the spending the funds part that's in the balance.
Okay.
And all municipalities in the state are doing the same thing. So it's just not New Orleans or Orleans Parish or the city of New Orleans. It's actually every municipality and every water utility.
Thank you. Nice to know we're not alone, huh?
Yes, Mr. Lewis.
So power status going into storm season this year. We've got 49 megawatts of 25 horsepower. We'll note this applies to the old part of the city, which requires 44 megawatts. So we have a little bit of redundancy, but not an awful lot. Turbine 4 will take shipment on the last of the parts here tomorrow, and we'll be installing those parts next week and then testing the following week. We will also be working to bring back our 5th EMD, those electromotive diesels, the train locomotives that have been converted to make 25 horsepower. That should be taking place early part of July. So going into the peak of season, we should be at or above 70 megawatts of power, which is a much better place for us to be. Last year, we had more power at this point than we did last year, but again, it's worth reiterating, Turbine 4, even when it is up and running, is still 120 plus years old. So very much looking forward to the Power Complex project, which Caitlin will talk about in a moment. On the next slide, turning to pumps, since we'll have the power, we can run the pumps. As of this morning, we're actually at 91 available pumps. Sorry again on the late change on the slide there. Drainage pump stations 3 and 6, which serve the old part of the city, D-pump and I-pump were brought online just this morning and then early this week at DPS 6. So that really brings the old part of the city into a really good place. Where we really are going to be focusing next is New Orleans East. There are 5 pumps out at 4 pump stations, and critical among those are pumps 3 and 4 at drainage pump station 14, which is at the very top of your screen. Fortunately, pump stations 16, 10, and 14 are all connected hydraulically by the Morrison Canal, so you have some redundancy. Each pump station can help the other out in that location. But we really do want to get those pumps 3 and 4 back online. We have our internal crews working on that, and if need be, we will be bidding that work out expeditiously. Are there any questions about pumping power? Very good. At that, I will turn it over to Caitlin to get the straight facts.
All right, so pictures being worth 1,000 words, wanted to share the most recent site overview of the construction going on in the area. Very exciting. We've got our foundations for our frequency changers, you can see there in the middle. We had some transformers that had even come on site, possibly the last time we met. And we are continuing to work on the other foundations in the area. This whole area used to look like a big bathtub and lots of piles in the ground, and that has now been completed and backfilled, and we're continuing to work in this area. The substation, of course, Entergy has been, their construction was complete in January, and they're continuing to do some programming and some other work, and we work closely with them on that. And when we get to the point of commissioning, we'll be working closely with them as well. From a funding perspective, and I don't think I did a good job of including a specific update on the contract 1420, which is what we discussed last time. And, General Lucy supported the award of that contract. That contract was executed several weeks ago, and we've issued the NTP effective June 1st. We've been working with that contractor already in some pre-work, working through scheduling with them now, and really getting into the meat of it. So that's been a huge win for us.
I can follow.
We're going to ask you that.
Paul's going to ask the same question.
Yeah.
So the contract, the notice received was June 1st, but we all know that the completion date is 400 and something days, which gets us to past, June 1st of 2025. So can you address, is there the ability to start some of the work early for June 1st of 2025?
Well, so yeah, the contract days, yes, started in June, technically 11th this week. So the actual contract started.
Okay.
We had been working with them on some pre-work and other submittals, and we hadn't been waiting until June 11th to get that started. Yes, it is 465 days, but we're going through the scheduling effort with them right now, taking into account all of the existing construction work. And we met with them yesterday, and we're having some more workshops with them to get a better understanding of when these more individual components will come online.
And the intent being to have the frequency changers, which will alleviate the need for turbine 4 online and ready to go by June of next year.
Right, that's what I,
That's the key.
at the end of the day, y'all are working with them to get that part of the
Yes,
job, even though
correct.
the job won't be completely finished, which is the most critical thing for the city.
Have you all been able to save any money on that $21 million delta in negotiations with that contract?
We are working through a few things with them, and we're still working through a few things, but what we would like to do also is get that, the 53 million contract we had included the installation of frequency changer 3 as an alternate, and we had not been able to accept that at the time. So if we're able to find savings, we'd like to add in the installation of 3 as into that. So, but we're still working through it. So,
Okay, so the contractor also looked at, you all had in your budget the purchase of electrical cable.
Yeah.
All right, and you had an allowance of X based on X quantity. The contractor looked at that and said, I think the quantity is way high, I think it's gonna be much lower, and the possibility you could save 2 million on that particular line item, or $1.5 million. Have you been able to get a feel for that?
they're still going through that, so now they're able to get in and actually do the physical measurements in addition to the engineering drawing. So I understand the question you're asking, I don't have the specific information, but that's something that the team is continuing to work through.
If we could have an update on that point too at the next meeting, we'd appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
still early days, but yes, I mean, absolutely, we'll do that. We'll have more information there. Yes, so, kind of again, summarizing, we do have over $200 million in contracts of our own that we put out, not including the work that Entergy did, and also not including design services. That is work that is, in progress to get us to this summer 2025 milestone of getting a couple of frequency changers online. The next contracts that presently are in design and finishing that up are the operations center, the expanded switchgear, and all of that combining to connect to our potable water pumping stations. And so that is what we'll talk about with what we would use additional funding for.
Right now you have your design, if you have the funds to design it, but unless we get an additional 29 million, you're not going to be able to contract it.
Correct.
Okay, so our understanding, what we hope, is that there's a federal program they're working on that they can get a grant for that. I don't know the details of that. I don't think they're going to have it worked out or even an idea until next week sometime. So I'm not, or even when the money would be available. So out of curiosity, to be able to get that work done for mid next year or even the third quarter of next year, so you could connect up the water distribution pumps, I guess is a way to put it. When would you have to know you had the money?
Yeah, so the installation, bidding and then construction of the operations center and the switchgear will, to be honest, go beyond 2025. So that's, but
No, if you had it today, you still wouldn't have that.
Those are just longer construction items, but, that's again, the milestone and the key point of having at least two frequency changers and be able to rely on the substation power, that's still summer 2025. The complete solution includes these other items. So, correct. Right now, we're finishing up the design, and our hope is to have some funding in the fall in order to be able to move forward with that.
Okay.
Yeah, and I do have on the next slide, you guys get to be my guinea pig and trying to explain this in a little bit more detail on the technical side if you are interested. So you can bear with me as I go through this, just to provide a little bit more information on what additional funding gets us. The current funding is addressing a lot of the risk on the drainage pumping side, and that's represented by cells in these two tables in green. And what this is showing is the different power sources that we have, four power sources, and the current funding addresses a lot of our risk on the drainage, but what it doesn't do is address all of the risk that we have on the potable water pumping side. Additionally, the operations building will provide really the space for all of our staff to work together in an appropriate hardened facility, and work all together. At present, those departments are not co-located, and so there's just a management inefficiency. And so that's the benefit of that building, allowing us to expand that electrical switchgear that allows us to make those more direct connections to the potable water pumping. So I will leave it at that for now, but that is what we're trying to convey on this slide. So thank you for that question. And just a quick reminder on the funding from the IMF fund for this program. We have 3 line items at this moment, one for the specifically directed to work around Turbine 7, 20 million in additional projects, and then the additional 10 million that was approved as part of the supplemental support for contract 1420. And if there's any other questions on the power complex, I'll take them, otherwise we'll hand it off to Gray to send us on.
Any questions on that point? Thank you.
So in terms of the IMF fund status, we're at 65.3 million in revenue inception to date, and that's through March. We haven't received it April, and we'll get anytime, it sounds like. Expenses are 24.0 million to date. This last quarter is about 1.7 million additional came through. It was primarily the power complex and the smart metering program management. So we continue to move forward with these projects, like we talked about with paving and the power complex, and just reap the benefit of having the funding available to do these contracts that otherwise would not move forward. So very, very appreciative of the existence of the fund, and we'll continue the detail pro forma included in the backup. And since we did receive the city funding on the contract 1420, at least in part, we'll be adjusting those 2 deferred projects in terms of making sure those continue to move forward, but just on a little bit less earlier timing than we noted. And then for this quarter, we don't have any additional projects to request or ask for, but anticipate we'll see how things go with the power complex, and then the resolution of this city funding on contract 1420. So for next quarter, we'll just plan to have updates on all of the above there. So if there's any questions, I think we have one additional slide on the legislative update, which they talked about some already.
I don't have any questions. Anybody don't have any questions?
So, Renee, you want to talk about lifts the bills?
Oh, no, I'll do it.
Yeah.
So Governor Landry signed the, I hope everyone on the call can see the screen, the Representative Willard's bill, and I'm sorry, and that's to do away with estimates. And he also signed the Representative Hilferty's bill for fixed billing. And the Willard bill had to be amended because a fixed bill is an estimate. And we are working personnel and systems in order to implement those in accordance with the deadlines there. And things are looking good for that. The domicile or residency requirement, an exemption for that, I think is pretty clear. And Senator Harris's drainage consolidation bill, this morning, some of us were at the council utilities meeting, and even Councilmember Morrell said they're really close to putting together $30 million for that program. And we are still working on our cost estimates. And we were asked for the base, middle, and Cadillac model of what that would look like. And of course, initially to really get the system in order, to then turn into a real maintenance program would be a larger investment in the beginning. And some folks here are very involved with helping us with that. And Councilmember Morrell even mentioned the amendment to the state bill on traffic camera revenue.
Did Councilman Morrell give a breakdown of that 30 million?
He did not, but we know about the, and Councilmember Jeruso's leading it, but we know about the traffic camera revenue, which is estimated to be about 10 million. And there were some other funds identified in the budget. I don't even have all the pieces, but he did say they're approaching 30 million.
That's good.
We're working very closely with that. And another thing I want to mention.
I'm sorry.
No, okay, to this group, which was mentioned in utilities, I'd asked Councilman Jeruso to address, because we went there to talk about hurricane preparedness, and in case the public obviously may want to know, well, who's in charge of the minor drainage system now that, we're in hurricane season? And he made it clear that DPW is, until there is a transfer date. We're working on it, all the components, in addition to the funding, equipment, and perhaps personnel. But the public would know in advance. And he actually said it's not going to happen during this hurricane season. So the laws, well, actually that one hasn't been signed yet, but I know that the governor wants to sign it.
Did that law specify a time period for the transfer?
It did not, but what it does allow for is the coordination and transfer of these things. It doesn't require an agreement or a CEA, but there would be something to memorialize it. And but again, what we know is it's not going to happen during this hurricane season. And that gives us time to keep coordinating with DPW.
So you mentioned that you all were still working on your estimate. I mean, you came up with an estimate for a 5-year plan. I guess we'd all, and that was based on a total guess of what it's going to take to bring the system up. Because I think we're finding out what it is. But I suppose that if there is an issue with money, that we could look at a 7-year plan or a 4-year plan or whatever, 6-year plan. Is there any conversations going on between the Surgeon Water Board and the council about how you want us to approach this? Is a 5-year plan okay, or they just wait for you to come back and give them it is 5 years, if you want something less, maybe takes longer?
Yeah, so that 5-year turnaround, it starts at about $40 million and then generally works its way down to a flat line of about 25 million, which is kind of, they talked about the 3 different models. That's sort of, it's not a you-go, but it's a reasonable. And that 25 million, we'll need that in recurring revenues in perpetuity to be able to clean 20% of the system every year. And that 20% is an industry standard, which frankly, we should be higher than that, to be honest, because we're not an industry standard city. We rely much more heavily, and we also don't have the velocity in our system to be self-cleaning. A lot of municipalities, gravity works well in Colorado. They can wash that sand right on down because things are flowing downhill. We don't have that luxury here. And Renee and Kassan and myself have been in the field with contractors, and some of these catch basins, we've popped the lids and they are full of debris, and they were cleaned 4 years ago. So a 5-year turnaround is probably not going to be adequate on some portions of the system, whereas others, maybe it's 1 in 10. But that 25 million a year, that's where we need to be able to flatline out. And I think JP Morrell alluded to it this morning. If we can't get $40 million in the first year and 35 in the second, money doesn't grow on trees and you can't squeeze blood out of a rock, but we do need to be able to set expectations as to what can be completed effectively. We may not be able to get to the 20% the first year, but that longer term, it's 25 million recurring is what we need. Got it.
Yeah, can I ask what probably about the consolidation? You mentioned earlier that there were issues with regard to having adequate personnel for various departments of the sewage and water board. As you look forward to the potential of the consolidation of DPW with sewage and water boards, how do you evaluate what you're going to need from a personnel standpoint, and what is your plan to meet those needs?
Yeah, we actually have a pretty reasonable proxy to look at because the size of the gravity drainage system is roughly the same as the size of our gravity sewer. So it's about 1,600 miles, similar number of sewer manholes. And we, because of our consent decree with the EPA, have to clean a certain amount of the system that amounts to about 15 to 20% of our sewer system in a given year. So we know what it takes to clean 1 million feet of sewer line in a given year and a certain number of sewer manholes. So we've been able to take those numbers and extrapolate it over the stormwater system and say, well, we need between 10 and 15 flush trucks, and the city has 4, which ostensibly will take possession of that. We'll also need a certain number of crew members, at least 2 crew per truck. They have a camera truck we'll take possession of. So we've looked through all of those components, and it involves a mix. So you're always going to have a mix of contractors and internal personnel. We do the same thing with sewer. So that's included in that 25 million as well. And it includes some point repairs. But I do want to point out what we do not have a number for is a capital improvement program. Because we know about the cleaning, but to my knowledge, there's been no widespread assessment of the situation structurally of the system. We know when there's dirt in the system, but I don't know exactly where the breaks are. So that's something that we will have to look at as well.
And is that something you're gonna find as you go to clean?
Certainly, absolutely. We'll be marked.
Oh, Lisa has her hand up.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Melissa, you have a question?
Yeah, this might be obvious, but presumably someday when we have a stormwater fee and a funding mechanism for the entire drainage system, then the concerns about cobbling together 25 million a year or whatever, from traffic light cameras or whatever it might be, have people talked about that already? Or are you anticipating you'd get revenue from the city like that on top of a stormwater fee?
Well, a stormwater fee would certainly help in that regard, but I think as we've talked about before, we've got, over the next 5 years, we've got $200 million in other drainage-related improvements and over 900 in drainage improvements for the pump stations themselves. So even with the power complexes on board, even if and when we have the 25 million and 30 million a year in recurring revenues, we still have projects like the discharge bells and drainage pump station 7, which are not supported by piles. They're hanging in space. The trash racks at DPS 11 in Algiers, they can't remove the garbage from the screen. And then there's a backup generator in New Orleans East that doesn't work because it's 50, 60 years old. We have backups to the backup there, but these are all projects that are currently unfunded that stormwater fee would. In addition to the fact that we have large canals that also need cleaning that are expensive to clean as well. So
So you'd want to hang on to that city revenue as well, I guess.
That's
even with there's no shortage of costs. Okay.
Super. Thank you, Lisa. Are there any other questions? David, anybody? Okay. Thank you very much for your report. Appreciate it. Good progress. Thank you. Is there any public comment? No public around. Any other business? No other business. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. David? All in favor? Okay, thank you all very much.
Thank you. Bye, Lisa.